A Folklore Survey of County Clare, Notes. Notes. 1. Cf. The Lavanderas de Nuit, discussed by Sibylo, Le Folklore de France, Tome E. 2. Colgan, Vita S. Sinani, Acta SS. Hib. March 8. 3. This I suspect to have been really a belated bear, as that formidable beast, whose bones so abound in Clare caverns, perished at an unknown date, leaving his name, Mathgaman, or Mayan, to his human enemies, and his remains as his only monument. Certain MacMahons, however, affected to believe that they were Normans originally named Fitzurse, in the same way as the McNamaras were supposed to be Mortimers de Mortuo Mari, by Spencer and others in the time of Elizabeth. 4. An account of a curious episode found in the legend of Street Mochula, whose life had been lost or taken from Ireland before 1637, has been preserved orally until recent years. See Bunratty Infra. The legends of the Armada on the coast, heard by me down to 1878, have been since confirmed by the publication of long-forgotten letters. So historical tradition, even under the unfavorable conditions of recent centuries, has kept wonderfully accurate versions of events. The continuity of the schools and families of the hereditary bards and alums favored still greater accuracy in early times. Ireland had books and philosophies in the 4th century, according to Ethicus of Istria, Social History of Ireland, Volume IP 403, and, possibly for the same period before Christianity as the Armada lies behind our own time, history was handed down truly, at least in its broad outlines. 5. Legend of Carn Chonail, Din Senches, Revue Celtique, Volume XV. 1894 pp. 478-80. 6. Fort, in this paper means one of the entrenched residences, usually circular, of the early inhabitants. These are called in Irish Rath, Liss, and Dun. The dry stone equivalent is Cahir. 7. Mish also means an altar in early works. Cf. Tripartite Life of Street. Patrick, ed. W. Stokes. 8. Now Inniscarrig or Mudden Island, Ilanwaddle, and Ismatail, or Maddle Island, and Carrickaniel were. The first two are named Inniscarrath and Inismatail in a charter of 1216. 9. Colgan, Op. Cit. March 8. 10. A Romance of about 1750, by Michael Common. 11. Crofton Croker, Fairy Legends and Traditions of the South of Ireland, 1825 volume. E.P. 31, The Soul Cages. 12. Adventures of the Sons of Thorilp, see also, Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Clare, Kilballyowen Parish, Ms. R.I. Academy. 13. I.e. Lost so far as I know. Many names supposed to be lost prove, however, still to exist, especially amongst old persons, but should never be asked for directly, as the demand usually creates the supply. This precaution is too little heeded by enquirers in Ireland. 14. Given by Dr. George U. McNamara in The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXXIP. 212. 15. Its curious and unusual changes of color give it the reputation of enchantment. 16. Analecta Bollandiana, XVIIP. 135. 17. H. O'Grady, Silva Gadelica, Volume E. 18. It still exists, though marked only, site of, in the New Ordnance Survey maps. 19. Wars of the Gael with the Gael, ed. Dr. Todd, Rolls Series. 20. Cf. Revue Archaeologique, NS, Volume XVIII. 1868 p. 1. Sir Samuel Ferguson's paper, From the Irish Point of View, in Dublin University Magazine, October 1834 p. 463, W. M. Hennessy, The War Goddess of the Aniscent Irish Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume XP. 425. 21. MSS, Royal Irish Academy, 23. M. 47. 22. As yet only in manuscript, one copy of AD 1509, and another probably from one of 1449. For its H.C. Transactions of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume XXXVIIP. 139. 23. I have to thank Mr. Standish Hayes O'Grady for this and other extracts from the work, the translations in the library of the Royal Irish Academy being, it is understood, very crude. 24. Another, Washer of the Ford, appears in Chokas Hostel, Revue Celtique, Volume XXI. 1900 p. 157, and she is also a bod. 25. Told me by Professor Brian O'Looney in 1890, and I have heard more recently of the existence of the belief. 26. Locke. CIT, Memoirs of Lady Fanshawe, 1830, pp. 83-6. 27. Among Families with Banshees, Thomas Crofton Croker, Op. CIT, ed. 1862, p. 115, names Old Englishry such as the Burkes, Rices, Hussies, the Norman, not the Gaelic, name, Trance, and Keatings. The Fitzgeralds of Kerry and Limerick had also a banshee. Of the Clare families, the Westrops came from Yorkshire, the Stamers from Essex, and the Lawins probably from Durham. Some banshees may have been acquired by marriage, for the three latter families were related to O'Briens, McNamaras, and O'Grady's, to name only a part of their Celtic connections. 28. Told to Dr. U. McNamara at Cahermanane and Corofin. 29. By Mrs. and Miss Neville and Miss G. C. Stackpool of Newmarket. 30. Cf. Irish Folklore from Cavan, Meath, Kerry, and Limerick, Volume XIX pp. 320-1, Volume XP. 119. 31. Is not the Death Coach, and not the Heliquin, the Helwain, of Reginald Scott's list of spirits in the Disquary of Witchcraft, BK. B. Cap. XV. 32. Cf. Herefordshire Belief about Corpse Candles. 33. The late Capt. Ralph Westrop of Coolrig, in 1879, and the late Mrs. Wilm and Mrs. Pitcairn, whose fathers were present. 34. From Miss Dare. Twig, FSA, whose wife is a daughter of the House of Ennistimon. 35. Review Celtique, Volume XVP. 441. 36. Told to Dr. U. McNamara about 1907. 37. Not Doonmeave is on the Ordnance Survey maps. 38. Told to Miss Diana Parkinson. I heard it locally, but more vaguely, in 1907. 39. Local Traditions, 1904, 1908. 40. Cath Fintraga, ed. Kuno Meyer, p. 15. 41. MSS. Royal Irish Academy, 23. M. 47. 42. Ibid. 23. K. 10. 43. It was certainly not the darker belief that in Scotland dedicated and offering to the one called euphemistically, the Goodman, nor like the sheaf sometimes dedicated to Bridget and other saints in Westminster, or, indeed, in other parts of Ireland. 44. Collected by Miss Catherine Neville. The sprite was, of course, proved not to be a leprechaun, as that being can be held by the eye alone. 45. Apart from Lawn, at Slievenaglasha, and the hags. 46. Misfortune was foretold by great waves at 4 spots on the Irish coast, to which later belief added a 5th at Malbay and Clare. 47. Fairy Legends of the South of Ireland, Part 2. 1828 p. 24. 48. The Dint Senches, Review Celtique, Volume XV. 1894 p. 456. 49. Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Clare, Volume EP. 3. 50. Op. CIT, Part 2. 1828 pp. 30-58 The Soul Cages. 51. Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Clare, Volume I. pp. 370 at SEQ. 52. This is the Church of Street Mary near the Round Tower. 53. Told by an old peasant of his grandfather, Dublin University Magazine, Volume VIII, Rect Volume XVIII, 1841, p. 548. The same person one moonlight night saw a dim figure making signs, and, following it, found his cow with her legs firmly fixed in a hole and in great danger. 54. See, drawing, and the figures in Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXIV, pp. 27, 33. 55. From 2 residents at Moving in 1908. 56. Alluded to by Crofton Croker in Flory Cantillan's funeral, Op. CIT, Part 2. 1828 p. 23. I heard it locally in 1892. 57. So Miss I Stamer in 1881. 58. Their ghostly appearances riding through Mayarda, and their plunging into the Shannon, are alluded to in 1816. Cf. Mason, Parochial Survey, Volume EP. 430. 59. So Mrs. Twig. 60. So Dr. U. McNamara. 61. So Mrs. McDonnell. 62. Except that skeletons, and, it is said, crucifixes, were found in the garden just beside the house. 63. So Mrs. O'Callaghan of Maryfort. 64. So the late Mrs. Spade of Afok. 65. Op. CITP. 115. 66. Review Celtique, Volume XXIP. 54. 67. Wars of the Gael with the Gael, ed. Dr. Todd, Rolls Series p. 187. This curious and bombastic panegyric proves statistically that the valor of Murchad was 1/16,867th part of that of Hector of Troy, who was 7 times more valiant than the Tuatha Dei acute Danan god lug long hand. 68. The Normans held similar beliefs. Giraldus Cambrensis gives an account of spectral apparitions in a ford during the conquest of Leinster. 69. Transactions of the Ossianic Society, Volume V, cf. Volume E. p. 58. 70. Prose Life of Street. Synanus Colgan, Acta S. Hib, under March 8, Section XXXVIII. See also W.H. Stokes, Lives of the Irish Saints from the Book of Lismore. 71. Okery, Manners and Customs of the Ancient Irish, Volume E. p. 322, The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXIX p. 249. 72. p. 64, ed. Irish Text Society. However, if the animal was common in the literary period, one might expect that the life of King David would have suggested an Irish counterpart to the monks. Fights with the wolf are practically absent from Irish tales, and it seems safer to regard the identity with the bear of the badger, as big as a cow, as a mere speculation. 73. So Dr. U. McNamara. 74. Windle, Topographical Ms. Royal Irish Academy, p. 3, Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP 350. 75. Anti. 76. The Mata, a giant, many-legged, and carapaced monster, infested the Boyne Valley, and left a pyramid of its bones in the cemetery of Brew. C. Dinsenches, Revue Celtique, Volume XV. 1894 pp. 292-329. 77. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP 309. 78. Translated by S. H. O'Grady and Silva Gadelica, Volume E. pp. 101-265. 79. So the late Ralph Hugh Westrop and Miss Eyestamer. 80. The late Hugh Massey Westrop heard this from the farmer. 81. So Capt. Hibbert. 82. I think Loch Breda, east from Tulla, and Clonlea Lake were intended. I am to blame for not making a note at the time, but was only interested in the legend. My notes only begin in 1878, though embodying earlier matter, and are too often car notes from drivers and others and not properly located. Where possible, I re-examined them from 1892 upwards. 83. In the Agalf Silva Gadelica, Volume E. p. 126. 84. So the late Sir Hugh Dillon Massey at Dunas. 85. So Mrs. O'Shea at Chlorane, Limerick. 86. Cf. Similar English belief as regards the devil. 87. So the late Capt. Ralph Westrop from Mr. Drew. 88. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP 236, cf. Gough Camden, Volume IVP 366. 89. So the MacDonnells and a driver named Russell Robin lived in the early 18th century. 90. So Mrs. Twig. 91. My mother in her diary notes, drove home through several floods, the worst at Bunratty. Saw the phantom dog at Cratloe. 92. So the late Hugh Massey Westrop. 93. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP 236. 94. Voyage of the Way Cora, Revue Celtique, Volume XIV, 1893 p. 37. Voyage of Bran, ed. Kuno Meyer, Volume IP 12. Voyage of Maelduin, Revue Celtique, Volume X, 1888 p. 45. 95. Voyage of Bran, Volume IP 14. 96. It is marked on a series of ancient maps from the 15th to the middle of the 17th centuries. 97. Gralla and F. Hinga, Irish Text Society, Volume IP 21. 98. Annals of Ulster, Clonmacnoise, and the Four Masters, Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP 304. 99. The Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, SER. E. Volume I. 1872 pp. 269 at SEQ. 100. Monks of Kilcrea. 101. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IPP 300-4, Handbook to Lisdoonverna, 1896 p. 64, The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXX p. 289, Journal of the Limerick Field Club, Volume E. p. 197, where I have collected the materials at some length. Other sunken monasteries and churches are alleged at Monaster Letterog, off the coast of Mayo, and the Cantillans Church in Ballyhigh Bay in Kerry. I do not regard the story in the Irish Penny Journal, Volume IP 362, by J. Jarity MacTeague, as anything but a work of fiction. It is very artificial, following other romances, and contradicting the genuine legends in several particulars. 102. Mason's Parochial Survey, Volume EP 490, collected by Rev. J. Graham from the Behanes, Landers, Conti, and Coonertys of Kilrush and Carrigold, Mr. and Mrs. Hull, Ireland, its scenery etc., Volume EP 436. 103. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume E. 104. Lays and Legends of Thomond, pp. 13, 20. 105. Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume V. Ser. E. p. 362. 106. This rite is referred to by Sir Samuel Ferguson in Lays of the Western Gael. Daily in the Mystic Ring they turned the maledictive stones, burial of King Cormac. 107. The Transactions of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume XXXI pp. 318-9. 108. Limerick Field Club Journal, Volume E. pp. 219-220. 109. George Westrop of Quinsborough. 110. Part of Kilkerran was mortgaged to Mountfort Westrop late in 1671, and he seems to have purchased it before the end of 1672, and owned it in 1674. 111. This was told to me in 1885, and I did not note the name. I find a thunderbolt or head of spear, named in a Mizajorni to Kerry, 1709, in Trinity College, Dublin, and the belief in the fairy origin of such objects is universal in Clare. Stone spindle whorls are reputed, fairy querns. 112. Transactions of the Royal Historical and Archaeological Association of Ireland, now Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume VIII, Consec. NSV p. 189. 113. Newmarket can be located on the parish map, Volume XXIP 180, as at Kilnasula, to the east of the Fergus estuary. The local Irish name of the village is now, as in the early 14th century, Corusula. 114. The main wing was built by George W. Stackpole circa 1795-1810. 115. The Ulster Journal of Archaeology, OS Volume I, 1853 p. 146. 116. I have been told by the late Sir T. Drew and by several builders of the discovery of cats' bodies apparently enclosed alive in recesses. 117. In pagan Ireland the custom of burial alive is said to have existed, e.g. Cairbre Neafer, son of Ross, buried a free hostage alive. Dinsenches, Review Celtic, Volume XVPP 319-20. 118. For these two cases much information has been collected by O'Donovan in the Genealogies, Tribes, and Customs of High Fiacroc, Irish Archaeological Society, 1844, and annotations of Turekin in the Book of Armagh, F10-2, for Leary C.G. Petrie, Tara Hill p. 170, from, Libar na Chuir, F76. 119. Skeletons were discovered on Aniskay Island laid with their faces downwards and with ashes at their feet. Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Mayo, pp. 207-8. 120. I.e. Dabach na Brathar, or Friar's Vat. See sketch by Miss G. C. Stackpole. 121. One at the site of a destroyed and forgotten church. 122. The spurge, the small variety of which is called the Five Sisters, in Co. Limerick, but not, I believe, in Co. Clare. 123. So Mrs. Connors at Fortan. 124. So Dr. McNamara. 125. So Mrs. O'Callaghan and Margaret Milani. 126. I mentioned the cure used in the old tale of Rose Moan, and was told it prevailed in Clare, but have never had the statement confirmed. 127. A fine high cross of probably late in the 11th century. 3 of its sides are shown in Plate 14, Volume XXIP 340. 128. So commonly told by the older folk at Tullycommon. 129. C. Ms. Rawlinson, B. 512, F. 108, B2. Saint Martin conferred the tonsure on St. Patrick, in recognition of which the latter gave him a pig for every monk on the eve of his feast. The origin of the Michaelmas sheep and Michael's portion in Ireland is given similarly by the Rev. G. Keating in his History of Ireland, middle of 17th century, B.K. E. Sec. IV. 130. So the Milani family of Coolrig Townland. 131. Vita S. Deglani 13th cent. Bollandists Tome V. Under July 24. 132. A long list of these beliefs can be collected from Heli Dutton's Statistical Survey of the County Clare, 1808 p. 306, the excellent letter of 1816 on Kilrush Parish by its curate, Rev. Jas. Graham, in Mason's Parochial Survey, Vol. E. p. 433, and S.F. Samuel Ferguson, in Dublin University Magazine, Vol. XVIII. 1816, Rect. 1841, pp. 547-9. I heard many of the beliefs in 1875 and 1878 from the fishermen at Scattery and Kilkee. 133. So Dr. U. McNamara. 134. Dublin University Magazine, Vol. XVII. 1841, p. 360. 135. So Dr. McNamara and others. 136. Scratch it in wood, and it will come good, says a rhyme. 137. Practiced near Tulla, and resulting in some cases in great ill will. 138. Edited by John O'Donovan, 1847, pp. 16-21. 139. Mason's Parochial Survey, 1816, Vol. E. 140. A somewhat similar wren's cage has been procured for the National Museum, Dublin. 141. Enoch was not merely a fair, but an assembly for merrymaking, consultation, etc. 142. E.g., in the Tripartite Life, ed. W. Stokes, among the early annotations of Turekan. 143. Mason's Parochial Survey, Vol. E. Under Kilrush Parish. 144. Library of the Royal Irish Academy, MSS. 14b 24, Co. Clare, Vols. I. and E. 145. Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Clare, Vol. IP. 183. 146. So Mrs. Connors at Fortan. 147. Pronounced OOGHT Ma. It is a weird spot with three ancient churches in a grassy basin on the flank of a terraced hill of bare grey limestone. 148. Windle, MSS. Royal Irish Academy, Borlase, Dolmens of Ireland, Vol. E. pp. 765-9. 149. Propuniculum Catholicae Fidei, 1665. 150. Cf. View of Well and its Offerings, Proceedings of Royal Irish Academy, SER. E. Vol. IVP. 87. 151. Saint Canera, buried on the strand as the saint would not permit her to land on the island. 152. Knocknanangle to the south of the cathedral. 153. Locked. 154. No woman dared approach, and still less enter, St. Senan's Church, the most northern of the group. For a description and plan see, the Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Vol. XXVII pp. 276-89. SF says, the Dublin University Magazine, Vol. XVII p. 547, that no woman dares to approach the ladies' well. 155. Mason's Parochial Survey, Vol. E. p. 459, under Kilrush Parish. 156. The summer pattern on St. John's Day still attracts a fair number of devotees, but seems to have no very exceptional feature. 157. Limerick Field Club Journal, Vol. E. p. 15. 158. Mayasta and Mayarda, Moyfordig, are at opposite ends of the parish of the latter name. 159. An excellent account, with a photograph of the altar and cross, was published by Dr. George U. McNamara in the Limerick Field Club Journal, Vol. E. p. 217. 160. It was exhibited in Dublin in 1853 by a Mr. John Cook, and sold to the British Museum. There is no local tradition attached to it. 161. Transactions of the Royal Irish Academy, Calendar of Angus, early 9th century, ed. Whitley Stokes, under December 13, p. 182, also published by Henry Bradshaw Society. 162. Cathrime Thwart-Helbe, Tulloch Nan Esbach sanctified by bell and previous mass by relic, gold enshrined, by rare piety and notable miracles. 163. An illustration of this was published by Valency in 1770. See Mr. Geo. Coffey's Guide to the Christian Antiquities in the collection of the Royal Irish Academy, pp. 53-4, 60-2, and for the Croziers of Doucet and Rath and Bell of Rath, the Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Vol. XXIV, pp. 337-9. 164. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Vol. XXX, pp. 237-44. 165. Much of this information came from Mr. Marcus Keane of Beech Park, the present possessor, and the remainder from JRSAI, Vol. XXVII, pp. 276-89. 166. Boulevan, white milk and ground, Boulanrutta, red place, Boulanduff, black, Bolan Amascan, of the dish, and Bolan Agriana, sunny, at Callan, Boultia, Boulibrian, Boulan Agalirig, of the clergy, Boulinacan, Boulaniska, of the eels, and Clunbuli and Kilmallee, Boltiogdine and Kilnaboy, but the inhabitants say that Boultia means, mired by cattle, not milking place, Bolan Anwila, of seagulls, in Kilmihal, Boultidulin in Kiladysert, and Boulevin, pleasant, in Kilkedy. In East Clare the name is rare, Boulanakowsk, of the Easter sports, in Slieve Bernig, being the only one known to me. 167. The Journal of the Limerick Field Club, Vol. E. 168. Ordnance Survey Letters, Co. Clare, Vol. IP. 161. 169. Helly Dudden, Statistical Survey of the County of Clare, p. 359. The smith was a magician amongst the Irish, and the ancient St. Patrick's Lorica prays against the spells of smiths, women, and druids. 170. So told to me by the late Hugh Massey Westrop, who, as nearest magistrate, had to intervene to keep the peace on more than one occasion, and was called up to the well on one May Eve. 171. Folklore, Vol. XXI pp. 195-6, is told by the late Miss W. Westrop of Fortan. 172. So late Miss I Stackpool of Edenvale. 173. As in most of my recollections of folk tales heard before 1876, the details are forgotten. 174. So in A.E.D. Bachlamp from the Book of Lismore, Silva Gadelica, Vol. E.P. 72, St. Brendan changes 50 seals into horses, which carry into the sea their riders, who, on reaching it, are, like their steeds, changed into seals. 175. Folklore, Vol. XXIP. 342. Mrs. Dorothea Townsend of Oxford calls my attention to the probability that this story was made up by Dr. Cately, B. App. To his fairy mythology. In my original Mizzy expressed great doubt as to this story, having found no equivalent to it near Dunbeg or Kilkee, but this was unfortunately omitted in publication. The Milltown mermaid was probably one of the white seals occasionally seen on the coast. 176. I.e. Dobharchu, waterhound. The Irish called the wolf Fael Chew, wild hound, and Culade, and the martin cran chew, branch hound. The more common name for the wolf in Clare is Brieg, as in Briegba and Breffy, the name of several townlands. The other wolf named MacTire, son of the country, is attached to Knockownbictira Hill near Lisdoonvernaw, where it refers to the animal, and to Cahermactire, a ford near Inchiquin Hill. At the latter place it may refer to a person, as the name MacTire is found in various annals. 177. Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Vol. XXIV, p. 94. 178. Silva Gadelica, Vol. E.P. 176. Antlers over 6 feet long have been found in Clare, and there is a fine single antler 6 feet 2 in long at Violet Hill, Broadford. 179. Revue Celtique, Vol. XIIIP. 47. 180. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Vol. XLP. 245. 181. Mrs. O'Callaghan of Maryford and others. 182. Late Hugh Massey Westrop. 183. Mrs. McCormick. 184. Dublin University Magazine, Vol. XVIIIP. 546. 185. Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume X. Review Celtic, Volume I. Joyce, Social History of Ireland, Volume IP 267. 186. Helly Dutton, Statistical Survey of the County of Clare, 1808, pp. 228-229. 187. Canon Dwyer, Diocese of Killaloe, p. 503, writes unsympathetically about this touching faith of the poor fishers. 188. Miss Eliza Egan, C. Ante, p. 51. 189. I have heard an almost identical story told among my mother's relatives as happening in Lancashire. The belief in animals and people's insides is almost universal in the British Isles, for example cn. In Q. 1st S. Volume V. pp. 221, 338, 466, Volume X. pp. 29, 84, 276, 523, 6th S. Volume I. pp. 311, 392, 9th S. Volume V. pp. 222, 332, 390, Volume VIII pp. 89, 346, Volume She p. 467, Volume XII pp. 414, 471, Folklore, Volume XP. 251, British Medical Journal, 1906, and many newspaper paragraphs, such as one in Morning Leader, June 3, 1908. I have heard the tale told in London with a large community of cockroaches as the tenants, ed. 190. So the late Michael Hazelton, an astrologer and herb doctor near Limerick. 191. So Mrs. O'Callaghan. 192. So Capt. Hibbert of Woodpark. A similar tale is told about toads by Giraldus Cambrensis, Itinerary in Wales, Cap. E. 193. In Ulster the conic worm replaces the beetle. The tale says that men were sowing a corn field when our Lord and the faithful disciples passed, and that he told the sowers to inform his pursuers that they had last seen him when they were sowing. The corn at once sprang into ear, and the pursuers, on getting the answer to their enquiry, were turning back when the worm cried out that the seed had only just been sown. The Ulster tale was collected by Mr. F. de Vismas Kane, D.L., of Monaghan. In Clare Island, Mayo, Mistern. Colgan found a similar tale told of Street Patrick and his enemies. 194. Michael Griffin, gardener at Atiflin, about 1875. My late brother, Hugh Massey Westrop, heard a similar tale near Glenamara. 195. So I heard frequently from people in Patrickswell, and Michael Hazelton, about the pennywort on Carrigogunel Castle, and also from a woman of the district between Sixmilebridge and Bunratty. 196. The details are needless. Cheap polemical pamphlets have familiarized the people with this Queen's tragedy. I recall an assault case, about 1890, in which one woman had called another, ye old and bowling, and been beaten for the gross insult. 197. MSS. Royal Irish Academy, 23, G5. 198. Mrs. Mullins at Maryfort Lodge. 199. Cf. The Tripartite Life of Street Patrick, ed. W. Stokes, Rolls SERP. 405. 200. Colgan, Acta SS. Hibernia. 201. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP. 100. Ms. Royal Irish Academy. 202. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP. 100. Rect 68-70. I gave the legend in The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXVP. 227, and it is still told in the locality. 203. From Messrs. Kelleher and Hilary of Owdera, to whose kindness and local knowledge I am much indebted. Cf. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume XXXVP. 346. 204. Saint Canera, buried on the strand as the saint would not permit her to land on the island. 205. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume IP. 50, Rect p. 144. A similar legend occurs in the Book of Lecan. 206. The Battle of Maglena, p. 30, notes. The legend was still surviving at Ballysheen in 1899. 207. The Journal of the Royal Historical and Archaeological Society, Volume VIII, 1864 p. 360. The cock legend is often represented on tombstones etc., and appears at Ennis Abbey, 1460. In a version gathered by me in eastern Limerick, the cock says, "I'm only a cock, and you're an apostle, but I'm the better gentleman any day." In The Tripartite Life of Street. Patrick P. 415, the angel Victor in the form of a bird leaves footmarks on a stone. 208. So told me by Shaneen, Little John, O'Halloran at Edenvale in 1869 and later. 209. This cave was famous in the 18th century for throwing out floods of water full of fish, cf. Inter alia, Gos Camden, and this is remembered traditionally, although the floods have been rare and insignificant since 1833. Other similar phenomena are recorded in the Irish Annals, e.g. in the Ulster Annals in 759 Benmilk poured forth a stream with fishes, and in 867, a strange eruption of water from Sliab Quillan with little black fishes. 210. Folklore, Volume. XXI pp. 180, 183, 479. The Pharycat, according to The Adventures of the Three Sons of Thorilp, was a monstrous cat having a crescent on its forehead and a sharp nail in its tail. 211. In fact, the Westrops, Drews, and Pattersons acted as trustees under friendly, Protestant discoveries to preserve the properties of the O'Briens, McNamaras, and Barretts from the hostile effect of the laws, c. 1730-90. 212. Corcomroe legend, given to me by the late Professor Brian O'Looney. 213. Statistical Survey of the County of Clare, p. 318. On the continent indecent names and legends are also attached to dolmens, cf. Borlase, Dolmens of Ireland, Volume. E. p. 555 Volume. E. p. 845. 214. Messrs. Hilary and Kelleher of Owdera. 215. So among the inhabitants in 1896-9. 216. Told to me by the sufferer. His predecessor, who had overthrown some blocks, was also unlucky. Cf. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXXVP. 212. 217. Folklore, Volume. XXIPP. 183, 186, and The Legend of Knocknaffir Bregon p. 185. Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume. XXIV. CP. 97, Volume. XXVI. CP. 471. 218. Com FHOD is also a synonym for a grave. 219. Dr. U. McNamara, a Liagon of equal length to the slain son of the Dagda, was claimed as an Eric by the victim's father, Din Senches, Review Celtic, Volume. XVIP. 42. 220. Analecta Bollandiana, Volume. XVII. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XLIP. 9. The basin was filled with milk by a hind. Similar legends are found in Glendalough, County Wicklow, and elsewhere. Giraldus tells how a hollow stone at Skellig used to be filled with wine for the sacrament. 221. Folklore, Volume. XXII, Plate IV. The name is Killian on the map, but is pronounced Kylian, with a long stress on the last syllable. 222. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXVIIP. 79, Volume. XXXIV pp. 190-1. 223. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXXVP. 345. 224. FEI's Tig Chonain. 225. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXXVIIIP. 351. 226. Ibid, Volume. XXIIIP. 281. Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume. XXVIIPP. 218 at SEQ. 227. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXXVP. 346. 228. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume. IP. 205. 229. Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume. IP. 157. The tale closely resembles a legend of Street. Cayman of Inniscaltra and Geraint at Inniscaltra, Loch Derg. 230. A Short Tour etc. p. 21. 231. Poem on Shannon, Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume. EPP. 15-8. 232. Ibid. p. 18. The same tale is told of Street. Declan and the beautiful perfect round tower of Ardmore, County Waterford. 233. Folklore, Volume. XXIIP. 336, Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume. IP. 144. 234. Folklore, Volume. XXIIPP. 57, 456. 235. The fall of an angel not long before the death of the late Lord Inchiquin greatly strengthened the belief. 236. In the will of the last recognized King of Thomond, Moreau, Earl of Thomond. 237. The Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, Volume. XXVIP. 368. 238. The Journal of the Limerick Field Club, Volume 1, Part 4, p. 42. 239. Cf. The well-known story of the Swaffham Tinker and London Bridge. 240. I heard this tale, perhaps in 1870, from John O'Halloran at Edenvale near Ennis, about the crows. Certainly that family, Misencrows, has a hawthorn bush in its armorial bearings, and the motto, Scama in Crow. Dr. McNamara conjectures that Flan's surname was really Misencrow. 241. For a list, with notes, see, Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Volume B. Ser. E. p. 129. 242. Kilcashan, Ordnance Survey Letters Co. Clare, Volume. IP. 369. 243. A saint famous all round Galway Bay, but not found in the ancient calendars. Some suppose him to be a fox hero, i.e. Cynic Mac Dara, fox son of Oak Tree. There is a Knockounatinnig, Little Hill of the Foxes beside his church. 244. Dublin University Magazine, Volume. XVIII. 1841, p. 545. 245. W. G. Mason, A Statistical Account etc., Volume. E. p. 434. 246. I learned from a petty sessions case, March, 1911, at Derrygonelly, that this custom prevails also in Fermanagh, and that friends and relatives do not visit the young couple in the interim, but entertain them on the second Sunday.